Pre-season testing for 2025 is officially in the books. And let's be real, these 3 days left us with more goddamn questions than actual answers. And the biggest, juiciest, most frustrating question of them all? What the hell is Ferrari hiding? Because that third day, oh boy, that did not go according to plan. Meanwhile, McLaren looks like they've stumbled upon some magic formula, getting faster with every single lap, while Red Bull is doing their usual move in silence routine, keeping their cards close to their damn chest. But Ferrari, man, they're throwing out mixed signals like a drunk ex texting at 3 a.m. Are they quietly confident? Or are they low-key shitting themselves? No one knows. What's crystal clear is that Bahrain wasn't exactly a dreamland for some teams, especially Ferrari and Red Bull. Both of them had a lot more in the tank, but they straight up admitted that they're not getting what they expected from their machines. Red Bull's struggles? Not entirely shocking, given that their 2024 season ended with more wobbles than a toddler on roller skates. But Ferrari, their inconsistency has people raising eyebrows so high they might just fly off their damn foreheads. Maranello came into 2025 with some big-ass dreams, finally taking home that championship. But judging by what we've seen from the SF-25 so far, they might want to pump the brakes on those expectations. Fred Vasseur, being the ever-so-smooth talker that he is, was the first to step up and play firefighter, trying to stop fans from collectively smashing the panic button. According to him, there's nothing to worry about. Sure, Fred, whatever helps you sleep at night. Bahrain was, in his words, weird as hell, and the SF-25 struggles on that chilly tarmac? Allegedly not an issue that'll follow them into Australia. Now, let's dig into that a bit, shall we? Vasseur explained that Bahrain had track temps floating around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, while Melbourne is about to turn up the damn heat to a scorching 45 degrees Celsius. So, theoretically, we could be seeing a completely different Ferrari once they hit Australia. But here's the real question. Is that just wishful thinking? Or is Ferrari actually sitting on a beast that just needs the right conditions to unleash its full chaos? One of the biggest, most pressing oh shit level concerns about Ferrari's 2025 Challenger is whether or not this thing has real championship winning potential. Because if we're going off of what we saw in testing, the pace wasn't quite where it needed to be compared to McLaren. And yeah, sure, Ferrari seemed a bit nervous, but here's the kicker, so was McLaren. Meaning, if McLaren was also holding back, then their real potential might be even crazier once they go full send with the MCL39 in Melbourne. And just to add another layer of mystery to this messy-ass puzzle, Ferrari has made some massive changes to their car design this year. They've got updates coming, but until then, they're stuck making the most of what they've got. So, what the hell is wrong with the SF-25, anyway? Well, for starters, Ferrari's 2025 Beast has an absolute unit of a front end. And that's not just because of the new pushrod suspension setup, it's also because the center of aero load has shifted forward. This means it's a dream on front-limited tracks, but it turns into a twitchy nightmare on rear-limited circuits like Bahrain. And that, folks, might be why Ferrari isn't completely losing their minds yet. If Bahrain was just a one-off issue due to track characteristics, then yeah, maybe it's not that big of a deal elsewhere. But here's the catch. What if it is? Alright, buckle up. Because if Ferrari thought they were about to waltz into 2025 with a flawless machine, they might want to sit the hell down and reevaluate some things. See, while a lot of circuits this season will put their rear-end stability under the microscope, it's becoming crystal clear that the SF-25 needs a wider operational window if it actually wants to go toe-to-toe with the big dogs on every type of track. And it's not just about the handling quirks. Ferrari has been tinkering with a lighter tire and a medium downforce rear wing during testing, trying to get a grip, literally, on what the hell works best. Now, every car on the grid has its own unique aerodynamic mapping, but Ferrari's setup looks suspiciously McLaren-esque, just less stable. And compared to Red Bull and Mercedes, it was about as balanced as a drunk dude trying to walk a tightrope. This meant that some of the SF-25's handling gremlins, especially under braking, got dialed up to an oh shit this is a problem level. And that's an issue Ferrari's engineers need to fix yesterday, because while this car clearly has potential, there are still some fundamental headaches that need sorting before the lights go out in Melbourne. Now, what about the drivers? What's their take on this whole mess? Both Hamilton and Leclerc have mostly kept their comments on the positive side, though if you read between the lines, it sounds like they're not completely sold on this thing just yet. Hamilton, in particular, seems to be vibing with the SF-25 more than his teammate, despite the tire degradation on the final day absolutely trashing his planned race sim. Talking about the car's performance, Hamilton, being the wise old sage of F1, made it clear that after 4 years of driving unpredictable machines, he doesn't put too much stock in first impressions anymore. Back in the day, you could hop in a car and pretty quickly know where you stood. Now, not so much. But honestly, this is the best initial feeling I've had in a long damn time. And that's a big deal. Hamilton thrives on jumping into a car and figuring shit out on the fly. That's his thing. And according to him, Ferrari's built a solid foundation, even if there's still a ton of unknowns. Maybe we won't really know where we are until race week, but we do know there's still work to do. That's some classic cautious optimism from Lewis, which makes sense given that this is the first time he's stepping into an entirely new car since his legendary Mercedes switch in 2013. But here's the kicker. Hamilton may be pushing 40, but his hunger, his ability to extract every ounce of performance out of a car? Still sharp as hell. If anything, his relentless approach and ridiculous experience might be exactly what Ferrari needs to fully unlock the SF-25's potential. Leclerc, on the other hand? Well, let's just say he was a bit less hyped. Not completely down on the car, but his comments made it pretty damn obvious that Ferrari has work to do before Melbourne. We're seeing the numbers we expected, but Thursday afternoon and Friday? Yeah, we struggled a bit more with balance. There's still a lot of work ahead. And let's not forget the weather. It was an absolute shitshow. We're talking cold temperatures, gusty winds, and even some rain. Conditions about as far removed from Bahrain's usual inferno as you can get. That made comparisons to past years nearly impossible. So, what's the real takeaway here? Ferrari knows exactly what's wrong with the SF-25. The real question is, can they fix it fast enough? Because while this car has clear potential, it might not be the massive leap forward they hyped it up to be. Remember all that pre-season buzz about Ferrari making huge strides toward Red Bull and McLaren? Yeah, based on what we saw in Bahrain, they might still be playing catch-up. Now, sure, testing times never tell the full story. We all know teams sandbag, run different fuel loads, and experiment with setups that will never see the light of day in an actual race. But Ferrari cannot afford to sit back and pretend everything's peachy. They're rolling into 2025 with a completely revamped car that's giving their drivers mixed signals about what to expect in actual race conditions. And while it's true that the bats-hit weather in Bahrain muddied the waters, that doesn't change the fact that Ferrari still has some serious shit to figure out. And here's the real kicker. Ferrari has put an insane amount of resources into this redesign. If it doesn't pay off, oh boy, the backlash is gonna be brutal. Right now, it looks like we're heading for a Ferrari versus McLaren showdown at the front. But there's a wild card in play, Mercedes. Russell and Antonelli could sneak in and steal wins, or at the very least, screw up Ferrari's title hopes by swiping crucial points throughout the season. That's why Ferrari is under massive pressure to prove that their bold SF-25 redesign wasn't just an expensive mistake. Pre-season testing has hinted at where the pecking order might stand, but let's be honest, testing is always a glorified guessing game. Teams hide performance, test out weird-ass configurations, and throw curveballs left and right. Meaning, we won't really know where everyone stands until we get to Melbourne. But there's one thing we do know for sure. Ferrari ain't walking into 2025 as the outright favorite. And that's a problem for a team that's desperate to break their 16-year title drought. Now, before anyone starts doom-scrolling, let's pump the brakes. Ferrari is not out of the fight. The SF-25 might not have blown everyone's socks off in Bahrain, but there are legit reasons to believe this car could be a serious contender once the season gets rolling. One of its biggest strengths? That sharp-ass front end. The new pushrod suspension and aerodynamic tweaks have made the SF-25 way more responsive on turn-in, which is huge for tracks that demand precision. Think Monaco, Suzuka, and Singapore. And while Ferrari did struggle with one-lap pace, their long-run consistency was actually pretty damn solid. Their biggest Achilles heel last season? Tire degradation, especially on rear-limited tracks like Bahrain. And while there were some concerns during testing, it wasn't the complete and utter tire-eating disaster that 2024 was. If Ferrari can fine-tune their race setup, they might not have to rely on pole position to fight for wins. Oh, and let's talk about Hamilton's impact. The dude's technical feedback is gold dust for Ferrari's engineers, and his aggressive yet calculated driving style is pushing the team to adapt a Mercedes-style approach to data analysis and race execution. That could be a game changer in how Ferrari fine-tunes the SF-25 over the season. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Ferrari still has major hurdles to clear. And one of the most worrying trends from testing, that rear-end instability under braking and acceleration. If they don't fix that soon, well, let's just say, 2025 could get real frustrating, real fast. Alright, let's talk about the giant-ass elephant in the room. Ferrari's got a big fucking problem when it comes to rear-end stability. And that's not something you want to be dealing with in circuits that demand brutal traction out of slow corners. Think Bahrain, Australia, Hungary. If they don't figure this shit out fast, McLaren and Red Bull are going to eat them alive in actual race conditions. Right now, everyone at Ferrari is all smiles and firm handshakes, pretending everything is fine. But let's be honest, Ferrari is notoriously bad at managing internal rivalries. And history tells us that when two big-ass egos share a garage, things can go from friendly competition to nuclear meltdown in no time. So here's the million-dollar question. If Hamilton starts handing Leclerc his ass from the very first races, will Ferrari naturally lean towards making him their de facto number one driver? And if Leclerc starts feeling like he's getting shafted, could that crack the team's unity? This has all the delicious ingredients for a Hollywood-level power struggle. Meanwhile, Red Bull had a shitty time in Bahrain. Verstappen, looked miserable in that RB21, and the team had some nasty overheating issues. But let's not kid ourselves. This is Red Bull we're talking about. They have a long-ass history of sandbagging in pre-season testing, only to show up on race day and obliterate the competition. If they've been hiding their true pace, Ferrari and McLaren could be in for one hell of a rude awakening in Melbourne. But while everyone's been busy obsessing over Ferrari, the real team to watch might actually be McLaren. Because let's be real, the MCL-39 looked insanely strong in testing. It wasn't just fast over one lap. It had rock-solid race pace too. Norris and Piastri looked comfortable as hell, and if their updates hit as expected, they're legitimately in the title fight. McLaren ended 2024 as the second fastest team on the grid. If Ferrari thought they were the only ones challenging Red Bull, they might have severely underestimated what's coming. And that's exactly why Ferrari needs to prove that their testing pace translates into actual race day performance. Testing showed glimpses of potential, but will it be enough to hold off a McLaren that looks like it just leveled the hell up? Or worse, a Red Bull that's been playing possum this whole time? And let's not forget the wild card in all of this. Mercedes. Russell looked decent in testing. And Antonelli? He's the mystery factor that could completely screw with the entire grid's expectations. If Mercedes suddenly finds its groove, Ferrari won't just be worrying about McLaren and Red Bull. They'll have three teams breathing down their necks. And if Norris and Piastri start consistently beating Ferrari in the first few races, Maranello might realize that Red Bull isn't their only problem. Then there's the inevitable drama brewing inside Ferrari. Leclerc and Hamilton are playing it cool for now. All smiles, all professionalism. But let's be real. If one of them starts consistently outperforming the other, shit's gonna get spicy real quick. Because at the end of the day, Ferrari's real fight isn't just about beating Red Bull. It's about keeping McLaren behind while making sure their own drivers don't start tearing each other apart from the inside. Now, Hamilton's arrival has already forced Ferrari to evolve. His experience, his obsessive attention to detail, and his absolutely ruthless approach to competition have pushed the team to step up their game. But let's not sugarcoat things. The SF-25 still isn't perfect. The real test, Australia. That's where we'll actually see if Ferrari can fight for wins or if they're still a step behind McLaren and Red Bull. Ferrari fans have reasons to be optimistic, but if they show up in Melbourne and they're still playing catch-up, it's gonna be another long-ass season of what could have been. So where does Ferrari really stand heading into 2025? Right now, they're rolling into the season with a weird-ass mix of hope, hype, and a nagging sense of what the fuck is actually happening? Pre-season testing in Bahrain did not deliver the clear dominance that Ferrari fans were desperately hoping for. But that doesn't mean the SF-25 is dead in the water either. The car did show flashes of real promise, its long-run pace was decent, and its front-end stability was noticeably solid. The real question is whether those strengths will be enough to go toe-to-toe with Red Bull and McLaren over an entire goddamn season. And let's not forget Ferrari's biggest headache post-testing, the car's fucking inconsistency. The SF-25 looked great under certain conditions, but then completely lost its shit in others. That rear-end instability under braking? That's not something you want in a car that's supposed to fight for a championship. Red Bull has dominated in this area for years, and if Ferrari can't get their traction issues under control, they'll be spending yet another season playing catch-up. And then we have everyone's favorite topic: tire degradation. Ferrari's biggest Achilles heel last season was the way their car chewed through rear tires like a goddamn wood chipper. Now, the SF-25 does seem to be an improvement in that department, but testing still exposed some worrying weaknesses over long runs. Leclerc and Hamilton both saw significant drop-offs in lap times compared to McLaren, which could be a massive problem in races where strategy and tire management are everything. But hey, despite all the question marks, Ferrari fans should still have some faith. Because while the SF-25's full potential hasn't been unleashed yet, let's not forget, teams rarely show their full hand in testing. Ferrari could be holding something back for Melbourne. And the biggest positive, both Hamilton and Leclerc genuinely seem to gel with this car. Their driving styles match well with the SF-25's characteristics, which is huge, because when two drivers are pulling in the same direction, development speeds up big time. But let's not ignore the giant-ass ticking time bomb: Ferrari's driver dynamic. On paper, they have the strongest lineup on the grid. A 7-time world champion in Hamilton who still has that killer instinct, and a young, aggressive talent in Leclerc who's been carrying Ferrari's hopes for years. But how long will this harmony last? History tells us that when two elite drivers are in the same team, tensions always rise. Hamilton versus Rosberg. Alonso versus Hamilton. Vettel versus Leclerc. It's only a matter of time before one driver starts asserting dominance over the other. And when that happens, Ferrari's entire season could hinge on how they manage that situation. If Hamilton finds his groove early and starts beating Leclerc, will Ferrari naturally shift their support toward him as the de facto number one? And if Leclerc feels like he's being pushed aside, will that create fractures within the team? On the flip side, if Leclerc is the faster driver out of the gate, how will Hamilton handle playing second fiddle for the first time in over a decade? The power struggle at Ferrari is shaping up to be one of the juiciest storylines of 2025. Meanwhile, Red Bull is lurking in the shadows. Their testing pace wasn't as dominant as expected, but don't be fooled, this is still the team to beat. So what do you think? Is Ferrari actually struggling, or are they holding something back for Melbourne? Will Hamilton and Leclerc work together, or is a full-blown civil war inevitable? And who's Ferrari's biggest threat? McLaren, Red Bull, or even Mercedes? Drop your thoughts below. And if you want to hear exactly what Piastri had to say about McLaren's insane preseason pace, check out the video on your screen right now.